the most important position on the field in football is quarterback. Your field general is what matters the most. It can make a bad team bowl eligible. It can make a average team a 10-win season, or it can make a above average team 13-0. Florida State saw that last year, and Florida saw that their quarterback really probably got them 3 wins. If not for Graham Mertz, they probably finished the year at like 2-10. Miami saw what happens when you have a bad quarterback around a bunch of good talent. You end up finishing 7-5, 7-6 in a bowl game, and a bad quarterback really, really handicaps you. But in 2024, who has the best quarterback room in the state of Florida? Not just the quarterback for this season, not just your starter. When you look at Mertz, Uiagalelei, and Ward, who truly has the best quarterback room here in the state of Florida? We spoke about that this week on the podcast, and here are our thoughts there. If you're looking at the QB rooms in the state of Florida, between Florida State, Florida, and Miami, not necessarily top player, not necessarily if you're just looking at one guy, but is there any team that has, I think it's between Florida and Florida State at the end of the day, and I'll shut up and just ask the question, but let's talk about QB rooms in the state. I think it's Florida State 1, Florida 2, Miami 3. Do you want to argue against that at all? Do you want to say that maybe Mertz is a little bit more proven than DJU and then Lagway is a bit above Cromanhawk? Or like how do you see the state when it comes to just QB room?
I'd like to disagree with it, but man, I think, DJ Uiagalelei is a very good quarterback. And, obviously he's 1 year rental. Graham Mertz has 1 year left at Florida. Cam Ward is a 1 year rental at Miami. I think the difference is DJ actually wants to be at Florida State, right? And that's, if you follow his dad, Big Dave, on Twitter. If you don't, please go do that, because he puts out a ton of really cool information and insight, and it's just really cool to see. I just think Cam Ward doesn't care where he's playing college football this year. He got a really bad draft grade. That doesn't mean he's not a great college quarterback, because he is. And I think he's going to be very good at Miami. But I like Florida State where they're at with Brock Glenn in the wings and Luke Cromanhawk. Florida, Graham Mertz, I got to be honest, TJ, he was a lot better than I thought he was going to be this year. I thought he was going to be trash. I thought he was at Alex Hornibrook. He was not. He was actually pretty good.
I agree. You're right.
He was actually pretty good. And DJ Lagway, man, that kid's potential is out of the world. His ceiling is so high. I don't mean to give a ton of praise to UF, but I'm going to with their quarterback room. I think for 2024, Florida State has QB room in the country, because you have DJ Uiagalelei, and if he goes down, Brock Glenn has experience. He's taken those bullets, and you have Luke Cromanhawk, right? I think Florida is probably the last as far as quarterback rooms this year specifically, but they're set up for success way more than Miami is right now. Miami just has Cam Ward, who is a very good college quarterback, but the guy fumbled the ball 14 times last year. We can't forget about that. That has to be something to be mentioned. So for strictly 2024, I think Florida State 1. I think Miami 2, just because Cam Ward has his ceiling is so high. But long term, it's Florida State 1, Florida 2, Miami 3, in my opinion.
So, yeah, I think, yeah, it's hard for me to not go Florida State 1. And mostly just because of how much experience is there. Again, you might, like any given person, might rank Uiagalelei, Ward, and Mertz in any order, right? Like you could conceivably, I mean, if you wanted to put Ward 1, I mean, Mertz's numbers were slightly better than Uiagalelei's last year, against probably slightly better competition too in the SEC. So if you wanted to base it on that and you wanted to say that Mertz was better than you, like I wouldn't argue with the this year's starters in any order. Like I just wouldn't get, to me, and they're so close, right? Like I don't think any of them are like leaps and bounds better than the other guy. right? Like if when the NCAA ratings come out, I keep saying NCAA, which is a trash organization that I should never mention again. When the EA Sports College Football ratings come out, like I think they'll all be within like 4 points.
Yeah,
Like
85
I
to
think you
89. Yeah.
yeah, like you might see like Cam Ward at like 87, maybe 89. You might see Mertz at like 85, and you might see Uyunglele at like 86, 87, right? Like I think they're going to be like really close. And so I don't know, to spend like time arguing that top spot to me is irrelevant because it's pretty much like a net equal. They're all about the same.
Yeah.
They all do some things well. They all do some things poorly. Mertz can't hit the long ball. Uyunglele is not the most accurate all the time. Cam Ward fumbles a crap ton. Like everybody's got their weaknesses. They've all got their strengths. Mertz is very accurate. Uyunglele is a great runner and can certainly take, like bulldoze and has a cannon on his arm. Cam Ward makes a lot of play. Like there's a lot to like about each of them. There's some questions around each one of them. But then when you look at the backup, when you look at what the rest of the rooms have, Florida State, a lot of people don't even talk about this. Florida State added a 4-star quarterback as a preferred walk-on this year.
Yeah.
So there's not only just Kromenhoek, who, Lagway certainly has a little bit higher of a ceiling than Kromenhoek, potentially, right? Like being the number 1 quarterback and Luke's like number 3. Like it's not like there's a huge gap there. But if you wanted to say like, oh, well, Florida's next guy up is slightly better than Florida State's. Well, Florida State still has Brock Glenn, who's an ACC champion. They still have a 4-star preferred walk-on right behind him. And then, Miami behind Cam Ward. I mean, they've got the Emory Williams kid from last year who played okay in Doak. I mean, I don't think the game was ever in question. You were never worried about it. They got that, Hufflepuff or whatever. They've got that one kid from, where'd he transfer in from? Albany? Same place as Verse, right? Is that where he came from?
I'm not sure.
And so, yeah, I think that outside of this year, yeah, Miami would be 3 to me. Like there's no question. Like there's nothing there. They're going to have to go, to me, they're going to have to go to the portal again. Like all that, Mario develops and all this stuff they're going to go to the portal again for another quarterback. And so, yeah, Florida State however you want to rank them for 2024 only. I'll tell you what would be interesting though. Like if you asked a Gator fan, they might have a point with this. Tell me if you think I'm crazy. I think they're going to do, now I don't know if it's going to be as effective, but I think with Mertz and Lagway, they're going to do a little bit of that leak Tebow stuff. I think they're going to play Lagway some this year. And that actually could be effective. Now, I think they'll be very smart about it. They'll run Lagway because he's a big kid, kind of like Tebow, not as big as Tebow, but like big kid, not as, Tebow wasn't super accurate either. But if you wanted to make the argument for Florida for this year only, and that was the way you made the argument, I could almost buy it. I think I could like almost get on board for that change of pace. I'll get right back to it, but first I want to give some love to Doug Rohan and Rohan Law. Some of you guys follow him over on Twitter. He's been all over the FSU ACC litigation, and he's really helped explain this process in very simple terms. If you haven't done so yet, make sure that you're following him on social media. All of his social media platforms will be in the description. We'll also put his website. Rohan Law is based in Atlanta, Florida, and he wants to be your best friend on your worst day if you are ever in need. If you've been arrested or hurt at work, his team is ready to help and protect your rights. So call Rohan Law for your free consultation today. Tell them that you heard about him on Double Fries No Slaw. If you've missed any of our ACC updates with him, I will link those at the very end of today's video. Do you think I'm crazy there?
No, I could definitely see that. And, with the NIL and, you're recruiting your own roster nonstop. I would not want to be a college football head coach right now. It's just ridiculous. But I do think Lagway gets out there, to your point, TJ, much like, 06, the way they used Tebow when they had Chris Leak, because Florida does not beat Tennessee in 2006 without Tim Tebow. And, the national championship game, if Ted Ginn doesn't get hurt, Ohio State wins by 50. I will always believe that in my mind, even if it's wrong. But yeah, man, I think Lagway is a stud. Like I hate to give Florida and their quarterback recruit this much respect, but I do think he's that good. And it's easy if you just ride Mertz, who are we kidding? He's not going to get drafted. If he does, he's a 6th or 7th rounder. If you only play him and don't play Lagway, well, there's a chance someone else says, hey, Lagway, I got, $10 million or whatever it is. come to Georgia, come to Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin, whoever it may be. Lane Kiffin may be at Florida next year. Who knows? But yeah, it's I do think there's an argument for Florida to have the best quarterback room if Mertz grows from what he was this past year. Because this past year he was so better than I thought he was going to be. Doesn't mean it was great or anything like that, but he was really good
No.
based on what he's dealing with and with that offense with the play caller. We'll see, but yeah, man, there's an argument to be made for UF, and I'm not gonna deny that.
And that's why I think you could make one for each for literally all three rooms in the Big
Yeah,
Three this year. I don't think there's an argument for the totality of the rooms. The other thing, and you just mentioned it, having to recruit your own roster. The other thing is I have heard, and I think UF fans are worried about this too. I've heard that Lagway is pretty tied to Napier. And so the one thing I think that could save Napier's job is I think he's going to play Lagway a ton, hoping that he looks really good. Because then even if they lose games, he can say, like, hey, this is my guy. You know he's leaving if you fire me. And with him next year, we'll win 9-10 games. And so
yeah,
now they can't go 3-9 and use that excuse. But if they go 5-7 and keep those games at the end close, or maybe find a way to upset LSU or upset Ole Miss or upset us, whatever. I mean, they're not going to beat Texas or Georgia any chance at all. But what if they lose to Georgia by 10, and then upset LSU in Baton Rouge, or no, that'd be in the Swamp. I mean, I don't think it's crazy to think that they could upset LSU. And then maybe they beat us by a field goal. Maybe they lose by a field goal, like in a close game, and Lagway like plays really well in it. Maybe that saves his job because they don't want to lose Lagway. I'll tell you this too: if he went 6-6 against this schedule, I think that'd be a minor miracle. I think they should keep him at 6-6, just for the record.
yeah. I'm betting the under at 5.5 is
Oh,
what
for
Vegas
sure.
has
Yeah,
him at
I think
right
they get to
now.
4. But
I think it's going to be very similar to a classic Miami season. I think they're going to start pretty strong, probably 5-0, 4-1. But I don't see them ending the season above 500. 6-6 to me is their ceiling. But they're going to start really, really strong, and then they just have to their credit, it's just a buzzsaw that last half of the schedule. It's ridiculous for Florida.
well, and this is not new at all. That's exactly what happened last year too. A lot of people forget they started 5-2,
Yeah,
but their wins were against McNeese, Charlotte, Vandy, South Carolina, who was a dumpster fire, and they had a good win against Tennessee. They started 5-2, and then they played Georgia, Arkansas, LSU, Missouri, Florida State, and
that Arkansas
lost the
game
last
was
5.
bad. That was
That was
bad for them.
really bad. So was Missouri, man. They had a 4th and 17 and couldn't get off the field.
That's right. Oh
The
man.
week, Mertz got hurt 30 minutes after J-Trav did. So, yeah, I mean, that's certainly not new. Like the idea of like them getting off to a good start and then just not being able to sustain it. So, but anyway, he's getting fired this year. So,
Yeah. 100%.